You're not leaving! His hand shot out, fingers closing around her arm. She didn't flinch. She looked down at his grip, then back at him, a smirk curling her lips, slow and deliberate. "Try and stop me," she said as she pulled free and walked away, heels clicking down the empty executive floor. Kim Jae-in stood frozen in his office doorway, chest burning, jaw clenched, watching her hips sway down the corridor like she'd just challenged him to follow. He yanked his tie loose as he felt his control slipping. There was no way he was letting her go, he thought to himself. And that was the moment everything started to unravel. Before we go any further, this is LifeTale Stories. If you love intense romance, dangerous attraction, and stories that make you sit up, then tap the subscribe button, turn on notifications, and stay with us as we dive into Kim Jae-in and Samara Hale's love story. The hallway lights dimmed automatically at midnight, leaving the executive floor washed in a muted glow. Kim Jae-in glanced at the time on his screen, 12:15. He frowned. He had made the rule himself. No overtime past 11. Not for assistants, not for managers, not even for executives who thought exhaustion was a badge of honor. The company was in a delicate phase, and mistakes bred easily when people were pushed too far. So when the sharp click of heels echoed down the corridor, his attention lifted immediately. That sound didn't belong here, not at this hour. He stood, the movement smooth and automatic, and crossed to his office door. Only a handful of offices remained on this floor, and he already knew who the last light usually belonged to. Sure enough, a glow blinked off near the corner. Samara Hale, his CFO, his equal. The quiet constant of his company. She always wore her hair pulled back, her clothes precise and unremarkable, her presence understated but unmissable. She worked later than anyone, spoke less than most, and when she did, she commanded attention. But the heels? They were different tonight. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossing loosely as he waited. There was only one path to the exiting elevator, and it passed directly in front of his office. She turned the corner. For a split second, his mind refused to make sense of what his eyes were seeing. Samara wasn't dressed for work. She wore a silver mini dress that caught the light with every step, the fabric clinging in a way that left little to imagination. The neckline dipped low, unapologetic. Her braids, usually wound into a neat bun, spilled freely down her back. Her dark skin glowed, warm and luminous, as though she'd stepped out of an entirely different life. His breath stalled. His body reacted before he could stop it, heat flaring low and sharp. He straightened without realizing it, his fingers flexing once at his side. "Samara?" The name came out rougher than he intended. She slowed, raising her head. Her gaze flicked to him, then down his body, then back to his face. "Oh, Jayan." Her smile was easy. "I guess I'm leaving you early tonight." She stepped closer, the scent of her, warm, subtle, unfamiliar, reaching him before she did. "It's Friday night and girls gotta have fun," she added, a wink punctuating the sentence as she moved to pass him. His hand shot out. He stopped himself just short of grabbing her, but the intent was there. Raw, instinctive. The realization hit him hard enough that his jaw clenched. "Where are you going?" The question formed unbidden, his eyes tracking her in a way he didn't bother to hide. The dress was too short, too revealing, too much. "In that," he added, the words slipping out before he found something better. She stopped. Slowly, deliberately, she turned to face him fully. Her gaze dropped to his hand, hovering far too close to her arm, then lifted again. Her brow arched, lips curving into a smirk that did something sharp and unwelcome to his chest. "The club," she said calmly. "I need to let off some steam. Work's been brutal." She glanced past him into his office, then back. "You should go home too. Rest. God knows we all need it." She stepped forward again. This time, he didn't hesitate. His fingers closed around her arm. Not tight, Not painful, but firm enough to stop her. The contact sent a jolt through him, immediate and undeniable. Her skin was warm beneath his palm, her pulse fluttering once before steadying. "You're not going anywhere in that dress," he said. The words landed heavy, controlled, final. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. Then Samara's lips parted slightly. Her gaze sharpened, not with anger, but with something else. Something bright and dangerous. She reached up, gently prying his fingers away. Her touch was light, dismissive, confident. "Try and stop me," she said, her voice low, teasing. She stepped around him, her shoulder brushing his arm as she passed. His chest burned. He watched her walk away, the sway of her hips unhurried, deliberate, as if she knew exactly what she was doing to him. His hand curled slowly into a fist at his side. Damn it. He yanked his tie loose, tugging it from his collar as he turned back into his office. The mirror caught his reflection. Jaw tight, eyes dark, control fraying. He didn't like this. Didn't like the possessive pull tightening his chest. Didn't like the idea of her stepping into a crowded club dressed like that. Didn't like imagining other men's eyes on her. And he definitely didn't like how much he wanted to follow. Rushing into his office, he grabbed his jacket and phone, dialing security as he moved. "Lock the building after we leave," he ordered quietly. By the time he reached the elevator bank, the doors were already closing. "Wait." His hand slid between the doors just in time. The elevator halted with a soft chime. She stood inside, leaning against the wall, one leg bent casually. Her thin strap bag hung from her shoulder, heels giving her just enough height that their eyes met easily. She looked him over, slow and deliberate. "Are you going to live a little tonight, Jayan?" she asked. Something shifted. He stepped inside, the doors sliding shut behind him. The space felt suddenly smaller, the air heavier. "You're different tonight," he said before he could stop himself. She tilted her head. "Am I?" "Yes." The answer came too quickly, too honest. The elevator descended in silence. He rolled up his sleeves, exposing the lion tattoo along his forearm. He felt her gaze flicker there. Brief, but curious. "Good. I'll give you a ride," he said as the elevator reached the ground floor. She smiled. "Nice." Outside, his car waited. He reached it first, opening the back door without thinking. She slid inside, crossing her legs, phone already in hand. "Double tea club," she told the driver. The car pulled away. Minutes later, it slowed, then stopped. Stepping out of the car, Samara looked up. "This is your building." "I know." She studied him. "What's this, Jayan?" "You wanted fun," he said, stepping closer as the driver exited discreetly. "I can give you that." She laughed softly. "I want a party. Not this. No one else deserves to see you like that." Her eyes narrowed. "And you do?" He shook his head. "No, but I'm willing to make sure I'm the only one." He lifted his hand, brushing her cheek lightly. The space between them hummed, tension coiling tight and undeniable. She held his gaze. Something flickered there. Something fragile, gone in an instant. "I want you to distract me," she whispered. "Make me forget." His answer was immediate. "Gladly." He turned, leading her inside his private elevator, then up to his penthouse suite. The door of his suite hadn't even closed fully before his hand found her waist. Not rough, certain. Samara barely had time to turn before he pulled her back against him, the click of the door echoing sharp and final behind them. Her breath hitched as his mouth brushed her ear, warm, deliberate. "This is what you wanted," he murmured. Not a question. She turned in his hold, fingers curling into the front of his shirt, pulling him down to her. The kiss landed hard, unrestrained, hungry, like they were making up for time they hadn't wasted but somehow lost anyway. He backed her toward the wall, then the hallway, then the bedroom, never breaking contact, never letting her drift. Every time her thoughts tried to scatter, his body anchored her again, hands at her back, at her hips, steady, insistent, focused. He kissed her like he meant to keep her exactly where she was, like nothing else existed beyond the heat between them and the way her breath kept slipping out of sync with his. When they finally reached the bed, it wasn't a fall. It was a decision made without words. He made sure of one thing that night, again and again, that she didn't think, didn't remember, didn't reach for anything outside the room. He showed her with his body what passionate distraction felt like, how it consumed, how it narrowed the world until there was only sensation and presence, and the relief of being held right where the ache lived. By the time exhaustion claimed her, Samara had forgotten what she'd been running from, and Jayan had made sure he was the only thing she ran into. Samara woke with heat still humming beneath her skin. For a moment, she didn't move, didn't open her eyes. Her body remembered before her mind could catch up, the weight of his arm, the press of his presence, the way sleep had come heavy and unguarded. That alone was enough to make her sit up. The room was quiet, washed in early light. She gathered herself quickly. Lingering was dangerous. She slipped from the bed and crossed the room, heading for his closet. His closet was organized to the point of severity. Dark suits arranged by shade, shirts pressed, spaced evenly. Everything had its place. She pulled on his clothes out of necessity. She couldn't walk around in her nightdress. Jayan had practically torn it off her body last night. She picked randomly. Black trousers, a white shirt, sleeves too long, collar loose against her throat. She folded the silver dress carefully, as if last night deserved respect, but no continuation. When she entered the kitchen, he was already there, bare chest, sweatpants hanging low on his hips, coffee steaming in his hand. He looked up and stopped. Something in his gaze shifted dark and slow, like the night hadn't fully released him yet. "I borrowed your clothes," she said calmly. "That's fine," he replied, though his voice had gone rough around the edges. She reached for her bag and slid it onto her shoulder. "I should go." The words were steady, final. He turned fully then, setting his mug aside. He didn't step into her space, didn't trap her between the counter and wall. "Stay," he said. Not a command, but an invitation. She hesitated. Her fingers tightened around the strap. She stared at the floor, grounding herself, reminding herself who she was before last night. "I don't do this," she said quietly, staying. "That's fine." That was what made her look up. "Just today," he added. "Nothing more than that." Something loosened inside her chest. Not romance, no pressure. It was her choice. Another chance to indulge. She exhaled. "Okay." The relief that crossed his face was brief, but unmistakable. She set the bag down and joined him for breakfast. Saturday didn't slow. It burned. They cooked together, but it didn't stay innocent for long. Hands brushing too often, his body crowding hers at the counter, laughter breaking off into kisses that left her breathless and dizzy. Every time she thought she had her balance back, he took it again. He kissed her like he was reminding her she was here, like he refused to let her drift back into her head for too long. When they ended up against the wall, then the couch, then the bedroom again, it wasn't urgency. It was intent. He made sure of one thing, that she stayed present. That when she laughed, it was because he'd pulled it from her. That when she went quiet, it was because she was overwhelmed, not retreating. He kept her focused with his body, with his attention, with the way he never let her feel alone in the room even when neither of them spoke. By evening, her laughter came easier. Her guard slipped without panic. Sunday morning was slower, but no less charged. She woke tangled with him this time, her leg draped over his hand warm and possessive at her waist. When she shifted, he stirred, pulling her closer without opening his eyes. "You're still here," he murmured. "For now," she replied. They didn't rush breakfast. Didn't rush anything. By Sunday evening, she was already putting her heels back on, his black coat over her body. This time, he watched her quietly. "Thank you," she said, pausing at the door. "For what?" "For not asking for more." He nodded once. "Anytime." She left without looking back. David was waiting when she got home, leaning beside her door like he belonged there, smiling like nothing had changed. Her body stiffened, but she didn't falter. "What do you want, David?" "You disappeared," he said easily. "Thought I'd check in." She laughed once, sharp, exhausted, honest. "You cheated on me, again." He sighed. "It was a mistake." "Which one?" she asked calmly. "The first, the third, or the fifth?" Silence. "I forgave you," she continued, over and over. "I thought if I loved you harder, you'd change." "Sam?" "Enough, David," she snapped. "I admit that I was the fool for believing you could change over these 3 years. Clearly, you don't respect me. I won't be a fool again. Leave before I call security. I never want to see you here again." He smiled, smug and familiar. "You'll come back to me." She met his gaze, unflinching. "Not this time." He left still convinced he owned a future she'd already walked away from. She locked the door and leaned against it, breath shaking loose. Her phone buzzed later in the night. "Jay in. Let's have dinner tomorrow night." Her lips curved into a smile. Before she caught herself, she replied, "Too much work." She placed the phone face down. The weekend was over. Dreamland closed. It was time to return to reality. But Samara didn't know yet that she'd already gone further than she meant to. Monday morning barely had time to settle before a knock sounded at her office door. She looked up and froze. "Kim Jae-in," she said, eyes widening. "You don't knock." "I do when it matters," he replied, already stepping inside. He closed the door behind him, unhurried, and leaned against it like he belonged there, which, unfortunately, he did. "You declined dinner," he said. "I was busy." "You're always busy." She arched a brow. "You're one to talk." A corner of his mouth lifted. True. He crossed the room, stopping just short of her desk. Not invading her space. Close enough to remind her of it. "Let me take you out," he said. No. Not sharp. Not defensive. Measured. "Give me a chance to convince you," he corrected. She met his gaze, steady. "You're persistent." "When I want something," he said calmly, "I go after it." There it was. The same certainty he brought to negotiations, to acquisitions, to wins. She leaned, back in her chair, folding her arms, thinking. The truth was that she had enjoyed the weekend, and deep down, in the depth of her mind she didn't want to face, she wished for it to continue. "This thing, whatever you think it can't interfere with work," she said after a while. The possibility of something new driving her. "It won't. We keep it quiet." Agreed. "And if it gets complicated?" "We stop," he finished. "Or if one of us gets tired, we end it. No pressure." Her lips pressed together. She studied him for a long second, searching for hesitation. She didn't find any. "Dinner," she said finally. "One." His smile was slow, satisfied. "I'll make it worth your time." They kept their word. No lingering touches in hallways. No looks held too long in meetings. No slips in front of staff. To the outside world, nothing had changed. But behind closed doors, they found each other in quiet corners of the city. Private rooms, late evenings, early mornings, time carved out with intention. Their conversations stretched longer. Laughter came easier. He learned how she took her coffee without asking. She learned when he needed silence instead of solutions. Sometimes they talked until the city slept. Sometimes they didn't talk at all. Either way, he made sure she stayed present, and she let herself. Just enough. Weeks slipped by. One night, stretched out beside him on the couch, Samara rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm beneath her ear. His arms settled around her without thought. She shifted slightly, hesitated. "I almost—" she began. He looked down. "Almost?" She closed her mouth, shook her head once. "Never mind." He didn't press, just tightened his arm, grounding her there as if to say he wasn't going anywhere. But later, lying awake beside him, she stared at the ceiling. She was falling. And that terrified her more than she wanted to admit. If you're enjoying the story so far, tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We love seeing our LifeTale stories family from around the world. Samara should have known better than to relax. The restaurant was quiet in that expensive way. Low music, warm lighting, conversations kept deliberately soft. Jae-in had chosen it with intention. Private room, discreet entrance, no eyes they couldn't manage. She noticed those things now. Not because they impressed her, but because they made it easier to forget she'd once promised herself she wouldn't fall this way again. "You're smiling," he said, watching her over the rim of his glass. She blinked. "Am I?" "Yes." She shook her head lightly. "Must be the wine." He didn't argue, just smiled back, slow and knowing, like he already understood the lie she was telling herself. Dinner flowed easily, too easily. They talked about nothing important. Food, travel, a project she wanted to revisit later in the year. He listened the way he always did when something mattered, even if he pretended it didn't. She caught herself leaning forward when she spoke, lowering her voice without thinking, falling. She felt it happening and didn't stop it. That was when a shadow fell across the table. "Well, I'll be damned." Samara's body reacted before her mind did, shoulders stiffening, breath hitching once before she smoothed it out. She didn't need to look up to know that voice. David. He stood there grinning, hands in his pockets, eyes sliding over the table, the wine, the room, everything but her face. "Didn't know you liked places like this," he said casually, finally meeting her gaze. "Guess I shouldn't be surprised." "David," she said flatly. "What are you doing here?" He laughed. "Relax. I'm meeting someone. Just saw you and thought I'd say hi." His eyes flicked to Jae-in for the first time, assessed him, dismissed him. "And you are?" David asked, already bored. Jae-in didn't answer immediately. He shifted his chair, subtly, deliberately, placing himself just a fraction closer to Samara, not touching her, not claiming her, shielding her. "She's busy," Jae-in said calmly. "You should leave." David blinked, surprised by the interruption. Then he scoffed. "Sammy knows me. I ask again, who are you?" "A man who doesn't need to explain himself," Jae-in replied. Samara's pulse kicked hard. David's smile tightened. "Look, Sam, I just wanted to talk. You disappeared on me." She stood abruptly, chair scraping softly against the floor. "You don't get to talk to me anymore." David's jaw clenched, his gaze growing heated. "You always do this. Act like you're done. Then you cool off, and we're back to where we started." "I've given you enough time. We need to talk," David added. Jae-in stood then. The movement was unhurried, controlled. But it changed the air instantly. "She said no," he said, voice low. "That's the end of the conversation." David laughed, sharp and incredulous. "Who do you think you are?" Jae-in didn't answer him. He turned slightly, eyes lifting to the edge of the room. A single look. Security appeared almost immediately. David's smile faltered. "You've got to be kidding me." "You need to leave," one of them said. David glanced at Samara, anger flashing now. "You think this is over?" he snapped. "You always come back to me. We belong together, damn it." Samara didn't say anything, just watched as David was escorted out, his protests fading down the corridor. The room felt too quiet after. Samara sat slowly, hands trembling despite her effort to steady them. Jayan returned to his seat but didn't speak right away. He waited until her breathing evened. Then, gently, he asked, "Did he ever ask what you wanted? Did he give you the listening ear you deserved?" The question landed harder than David's words ever had. She swallowed, shook her head once. "No." Jayan nodded, as if that confirmed something he'd already suspected. They finished dinner quietly after that. He walked her to her car, opening the door without ceremony. When she looked up at him, emotion tightened her chest. He didn't try to kiss her. Didn't touch her at all. "Thank you," she said instead. "For what?" "For not making me handle that alone." He met her gaze, steady and serious. "You won't have to. Not with me." She drove home with his words echoing louder than she wanted them to. Because somewhere between protection and presence, Samara realized she wasn't just falling anymore. She was already in too deep. She didn't know yet how much that was going to cost both of them. Samara started making space for him without announcing it. She didn't cancel meetings outright. She shifted them, moved calls earlier, let evenings breathe where they used to be packed tight. It was subtle. So subtle she almost convinced herself it meant nothing. Almost. One Wednesday, she left the office earlier than planned. Not rushed, not guilty. She texted him on her way down. "Samara, are you free?" The reply came faster than she expected. "Jayan, I can be." When she arrived at his place, he was already loosening his sleeves, jacket draped over a chair like he'd been waiting. He didn't ask why she'd come, just stepped close enough that her breath caught, his hand settling at her lower back with familiar certainty. "You ate?" he asked. "Not yet." "Good." He cooked. She watched. The rhythm between them felt practiced now. Easy reaches, shared glances, quiet laughter that didn't need punctuation. When he turned, she was right there, close enough that his chest brushed her shoulder. He kissed her once. Slow. Grounding. Not hungry. Assured. Later, curled against him on the couch, she listened to the steady rise and fall of his breath, tracing the seam of his shirt with her finger. She told him something small, about a project she'd fought to keep alive years ago, how close she'd come to walking away when it almost failed. "You didn't," he said. She smiled faintly. "I don't quit." "I know." The way he said it, certain, unchallenged, settled something in her chest. That night, when they finally went to bed, he held her like he had nowhere else to be. No urgency, no demand, just presence. When she slept, it was deep and unguarded. The following week was heavier at work. A deal stalled. Tempers flared. She watched him handle it all with the same controlled precision that had built the company. Calm voice, decisive moves, pressure absorbed without visible strain. It impressed her. It reassured her. When he canceled dinner one night with an apology and a promise for later, she didn't mind. She understood. She always understood. "That's fine," she texted. "Handle it." He did. He always did. On Friday, she showed up at his office door near closing, files tucked under her arm. He looked up, surprised and pleased. "I thought you were booked." "I moved things around," she said lightly. "Thought we could eat." He hesitated. Just a second. Then nodded. "Give me 10. She smiled and waited. Later, walking beside him toward the elevator, she caught herself thinking how natural it felt. How easy. How right. This was different, she told herself. This time she wasn't shrinking. She wasn't begging. She was choosing. He reached for her hand as the doors closed, thumb brushing her knuckles once, absent-minded and intimate. She leaned into him without thinking. She didn't notice the way his phone kept lighting up. She didn't notice how his jaw tightened when he glanced at it. She only noticed how safe she felt. And that was the danger. She didn't know yet that this was the last stretch of calm before the first real mistake. The mistake didn't come with raised voices. It came quietly, wrapped in urgency and reason. Samara had moved a meeting, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. She'd shifted one call earlier, pushed another to the next morning, carving out the evening with careful precision. It felt intentional, chosen. She texted him while packing up. "Samara, I'm free tonight. Dinner?" The reply didn't come right away. When it did, it was short. "J-in. I can't." Something came up. She paused at her desk, fingers stilling. "Samara, I moved a meeting." This time, the response was immediate. "J-in. You know how this works. I have to keep appearances with the other chiefs. I'll make it up to you." The words landed wrong, not cruel, dismissive. Her chest tightened. She stared at the screen, something cold settling low in her chest. The echo came uninvited. David's voice, casual and confident, telling her she understood how his world worked, that she'd adjust. "You know how this works." David had said the same thing, casually, confidently, every time she asked for time, every time she adjusted herself to fit his life. And here she was again, repeating the same cycle, but with a different man. The truth about what she and Jayan really were settled heavy in her chest, like waking from a deep, dangerous sleep. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then she locked her phone and slipped it into her bag. "Okay," she said to the empty office. She didn't argue, didn't explain what it had cost her to make the time, didn't remind him she hadn't asked often. She simply let go. She didn't pull away all at once. That would have been obvious. Emotional. Easier to question. Instead, she became measured. She stopped initiating. She stopped lingering after meetings. Stopped texting first. Stopped adjusting her time and world to fit his. At dinner 2 nights later, rescheduled at his insistence, she was polite, engaged, present, but distant. He noticed. "What's wrong?" he asked finally. "Nothing," she said evenly. "Just tired." It wasn't a lie, just not the whole truth. When they lay beside each other later, her body didn't curl toward his the way it used to. She stayed on her side of the bed, breathing, measured, controlled. Jayan watched her for a long time before turning away. She would talk when she was ready, he thought. For now, he chose not to crowd her. When Samara canceled dinner the following week, she didn't dramatize it. She sent a text. "I won't make it tonight." Jayan called immediately, but she let it ring. By the time he showed up at her office the next morning, his restraint was thin. "You canceled," he said, closing the door behind him. "I had other plans." His brow furrowed. "Since when?" A soft chuckle escaped her lips. "I have a life outside of you and this company." "That's fine," Jayan replied, his eyes narrowing. Something felt off. "So where did you go?" He pressed softly. She met his gaze, steady, clear. "I went on a blind date." The silence was instant. "What?" he asked. "A friend set it up," she continued evenly, shrugging like it was nothing. "I said yes." He stared at her like she'd spoken another language. "Why?" "Because this," she said softly, was starting to feel like something I wasn't ready to finish. "That's not fair," he said. "You didn't say you wanted to stop." "I did," she replied. "When I stopped trying to fit myself around your life." He stepped closer. "So instead of talking to me, you went out with someone else?" "Yes," she snapped. The word didn't shake, but deep down she knew she wasn't being mature. It was childish. She was probably running away, but she couldn't bear another hurt. Especially not from Jayan. It was clear she needed time to heal. Time to move on. "I don't want to be distracted anymore," she went on. "I don't want something that feels good but leaves me guessing. I need clarity, and I don't think we're in the same place." His jaw tightened. "So that's it?" She nodded once. "I think it should end. No accusation, no anger. Just the truth." laid out in a different way. Jayan's phone pinged continuously, breaking the tension in the air. "We'll talk later," he said after a beat. "If you want to," she answered gently. He didn't reply. He turned and walked out. That night, Samara sat alone on her couch, the city humming beyond the windows. She told herself she'd made the right choice. That ending it now was better than breaking later. That this was growth, not fear. That she hadn't run away. "It had to be done," she whispered. Days passed, then 2 weeks. He never came back to talk. The silence settled, heavy, final. And though she missed him, she didn't regret choosing herself. Not ever. The company's gala was impossible to miss. Glass walls lit from within, music drifting into the night, cars arriving in a steady, polished stream. Samara stepped out of her ride with practiced composure, smoothing the front of her dress as flashes popped nearby. She smiled when required, nodded when greeted. She felt steady. That mattered. Inside, the room shimmered with power. Investors, politicians, executives moving in clusters that shifted and reformed with purpose. Samara did what she always did in rooms like this. She worked. Conversations flowed. Promises were implied without being spoken. She didn't look for him, but she still saw him anyway. Jayan entered a few minutes later, calm as ever, a blonde woman at his side. They moved together with easy familiarity, her hand resting lightly on his arm. Samara registered the detail, then set it aside. So this was it. The thought didn't hurt the way she'd expected. It settled, quiet and heavy, like confirmation. She turned back to the group in front of her, finishing a point with measured confidence. When she excused herself, it was to step outside for air. Not because she needed escape. She leaned against the balcony rail, city lights stretching endlessly below. "Samara." His voice reached her before his footsteps did. She didn't turn right away. "We need to talk," he added. "You should be with your guest." The words slipped out before she could stop it, her voice tight and laced with an underlying emotion. "She's not what you think." She faced him then, expression calm. "It doesn't matter." "It does to me," he said. She crossed her arms, grounding herself. "What do you want to talk about, Jayan?" "Us." "There is no us." The words were steady, clean. He frowned. "You can't decide that alone." "I already did," she replied. "We made the rules, remember? I'm already tired." "I don't believe that," Jayan said, stepping closer. "It didn't feel like that. Samara, tell me honestly what you want." "I'm not sure, Jayan, but I know I don't want to be a benefit. I don't want something that exists only when it's convenient. I want more." His jaw tightened. "I never said you were a benefit." "You didn't have to," she said quietly. "You were a distraction for me, and you wanted my body. But even that has an end." Silence stretched between them, filled with music and distant laughter. She continued, softer now. "I want a man who chooses me with his whole chest, not because I fit into his world, not because I can play the understanding girlfriend while he dismisses me. I want someone who is intentional about me. I want a man that can give me all his time, his attention, his heart." He swallowed. "I want more," she finished. "Can you handle that?" For the first time since she'd known him, Jayan looked uncertain. Then he exhaled. Slow, honest. "Samara, I never wanted you only for your body. God, His voice broke, filled with emotion. "I didn't know how to do this without control," he said. "I thought protecting you meant giving you space, not pressing in because I know I can be too much." "I was wrong." She held his gaze, unmoving. "I never meant to hurt you or be dismissive," he continued, "and I'm terrified of being the man who does." The admission landed heavier than any promise. "You mean so much to me, Samara." "That woman," he added, nodding toward the room. "She's the daughter of Senator Richards. She's here on his behalf. It's business." Nothing more. She searched his face for deceit but found none. I was sure about you from day one, he said. I just didn't know how to say it, and I knew you needed convincing, so I spent days planning and overthinking. And I ended up waiting too long. I don't want you for your body. I mean, your body is sexy and beautiful, but I also love your mind, your smarts, your laugh, your silly jokes that aren't funny. Samara was brought to tears at his words. Everything sounded so beautiful, but she felt scared. We didn't start right, she choked out. What do you mean? The night we started all this, I said I wanted to be distracted. Do you know why? She whispered. Jae-in shook his head. My boyfriend of 3 years cheated on me. Again. For the 5th time. And I was just done. Done with everything. With love. With trying to be understanding. With forgiving someone that wasn't ready to commit. Are you talking about trash bag? Jae-in asked. He was a fool for cheating on you, Samara. He didn't deserve you. Look, Jae-in, I threw myself into work the week I found out. And when that wasn't enough, I wanted to forget. Forget the pain, and dance the night away. It doesn't matter how we started, Jae-in cut in. I'll prove my commitment to you. He took a step back. Then, to her shock, he lowered himself onto one knee. Her breath caught. Jae-in, what are you doing? Relax, he said, a faint smile tugging at his mouth. I'm not proposing. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box, opening it to reveal a simple red onyx ring. Samara Hale, will you do me the honor of being my one and only girlfriend? Jae-in, she whispered, her hand closing over her mouth. No one asks someone to be their girlfriend with a ring. Well, I do. Because you mean so much, Jae-in replied. And all these years we worked together. I should have known my true feelings for you. But I know we happened at the right time. Maybe not in the best circumstances, but at the right time. I feel it in my bones, Samara. We are right for each other. So, please, Samara, do me this honor, he added, his gaze focused on her. Also, my knees are starting to hurt. Samara laughed out loud, her heart light. Yes. You crazy man? She stretched her hand out. I'll be your girlfriend. He slid the ring onto her finger and stood, pulling her into him. The kiss was unhurried, slow, and deep. When they parted, he brushed his thumb along her jaw. Do you know what we should do right now? He asked. What? She asked, still breathless from the kiss. We should commemorate our day one at a different venue. We can't leave the party, she gasped. You can't leave the party, you're the VVIP. Not this night, baby, he answered and kissed her. Tonight, you're my very own VIP. They left together, the noise of the gala fading behind them. This time, love wasn't an escape. It was intentionally chosen, ready to be explored. If you enjoyed this story, leave a heart in the comments so we know you stayed with us till the end. Like and subscribe for more emotionally intense stories. Your support and presence means much more to us than you think. We're glad to have you here. See you in the next story.